Hello, everybody. I'm Volker Friedrich, the founder and managing partner of GBP International, a project and management consulting company based in Asia Pacific, working across the globe. And in our series of interviews, I have the great pleasure today to talk to Peter Vesterbacka. And I think for most of the people, he hardly needs any introduction. Everybody who is familiar with startup, entrepreneurs, gaming, and even today infrastructure projects, he's a name you need to be aware of. Peter, great to have you here in our talk.
And hey, it's fantastic to be here.
Great. You are up north in Finland. I'm in Germany.
Yes.
It's Zoom meetings are the name of the game in COVID times.
Yep.
Things have changed quite a lot from the times where we all met personally. And
very true.
I'd like to have your thoughts today, basically on your biggest projects you are looking after at the moment. This is a big tunnel project. Maybe for our viewers, you can briefly summarize what are you planning there and how it all basically came out of your past experience as an entrepreneur, as a game entrepreneur, as a venture capitalist. If you give us a quick rundown why you ended up pursuing this tunnel project.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that it's a very good question, and I think that if you look at just the tunnel, I mean that is kind of like a bit like an outlier there, and okay, like always get asked in that, okay, Peter, that like what do you know about building tunnels and like why are you doing it? And I think that it's important to then and I always of course answer that I don't know that much about building tunnels, but of course learning fast, and I've been working on it now together with the teams from A3 and AINS and FIRA and CREC and so on for 5 years. So we have pretty big and very knowledgeable consortiums. So some of the best experts on actually infrastructure building and construction, like anywhere in the world. So that's kind of like is how I can answer that. I actually have a team that knows everything about tunneling. But then if you look at,
I think this is what we have in common. As a consultant, we always have to get the best team together with the best knowledgeable people, and you don't have to know how the engine works. You need to drive it, basically.
Exactly, totally like that. And I think that this is, like also if you look at then the tunnel, I mean, the tunnel is just kind of like a detail, if you will, in this kind of like bigger kind of like plan that we are executing on, and that's why we talk about the finest Bay Area and the finest Bay Area tunnel, so the tunnel connecting Helsinki and Tallinn. And we're really looking at this as kind of like area development, and of course leveraging our fantastic geographic location that here in Helsinki, Tallinn, we are the closest neighbor of China, the closest neighbor of India, closest neighbor of all of Asia. I mean, I get on a plane normal, like non-pandemic times in Helsinki, and 6 hours later I'm in Delhi, and it takes between 7 and 8 hours, and I'm in Beijing. And not only do we have the capitals covered, but you can fly direct to Beijing, Shanghai, Chongqing, Guangzhou, Chengdu, Jinan, Nanjing, and I'm sure I forgot like a few cities, and that's just like China. And then same thing in Japan, that you have 3 flights a day to Tokyo, but you also have Nagoya, Osaka, Fukuoka, Sapporo, and so on and so on. So it's like very good connection between Europe and Asia. And then another thing that we have been working on for many years is, of course, then kind of like building up and strengthening the startup ecosystem here in the finest Bay Area. So basically all the kind of countries that we have here around the water, I mean, it include Germany there if you go kind of like far enough, but if you look at just this like finest Bay Area, you have Estonia, obviously, that is leading the world when it comes to the number of unicorns per capita. They have now 7 unicorn companies, so 7 companies, unlisted companies worth more than $1 billion, and starting with Playtech, then Skype, then TransferWise, Bolt, Pipedrive, and so on. And what is interesting and why I bring this up is that if you look at this metric, like number of unicorns per capita, so China, they have more than 200 unicorn companies in China, but they also have 1.4 billion people, and our friends in Estonia only 1.3 million and 7 unicorn companies. So then if we do the math quickly, it means that in China you need 7 million people to build one unicorn company, while in Estonia it's less than 300,000. So the efficiency is like amazing. And we've done our fair share in Finland and in Sweden. If you look at the number of unicorn companies, I mean, Sweden, Spotify, Klarna, here in Finland, Rovio with Angry Birds, Supercell, a lot of unicorns in gaming. We had MySQL back in the day, which was one of the very first unicorn companies in our part of the world. So we have been working on increasing the talent density. So I'm a big believer in that way, kind of like the Silicon Valley model, if you will, that there, you have top universities like Stanford and Berkeley, and then around that you have built a fantastic startup ecosystem. In fact, I started my working career at HP, the company that Bill and Dave started all the way back in 1939 in their garage in Palo Alto, and then Silicon Valley came about around that. So we have been working on this, increasing the talent density, and with the tunnel we are creating gravity. We are creating something that will attract a lot of people to the Helsinki, Tallinn, now unified metropolitan area. So when we have the tunnel connecting Helsinki and Tallinn, we reduce the travel time from currently 2 hours by ferry to just to 20 minutes from airport to airport. So again, the city becomes one unified metropolitan area with about 2 million people, which is then things become interesting.
Yeah. When I studied your project a little bit, and I was hearing about it first time 2-3 years ago, and in the preparation for our discussion, I always read about it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I have the feeling that many people don't yet understand that the actual physical tunnel project is just a physical platform for a multitude of other activities, which are really amazing. You are going to build a new city with a new island. You are building university. You are building new mobility concepts. You are building many things. And I'm amazed how little this project is known in mainland Europe. If I read the newspaper, I only read about it once or twice a year when you sign a new MOU, like you did recently. And correct me if I'm wrong, I see that people fail to understand the bigger picture of the little project. It's one of the largest construction projects in Europe. Take off. But the leverage it's going to have once it's unfolding, it's basically a new, let's say, physical Facebook, a new physical Amazon, a new Google, and everything.
Absolutely. And I think that we are kind of like cranking up like the visibility a little bit, and then actually we have now also work very closely with the EU Commission. So, for example, on innovation. So Maria Gabriel is the Commissioner for Innovation, Youth and Education. And next week we're presenting this. Actually, on Monday there is an event talking about the EU startup ecosystem and how we will make Europe and the EU a leader globally when it comes to kind of like startup creation, unicorn creation. And the plan is to actually increase that by 10 times in the next 10 years. And in this, the EU is definitely looking to the finest Bay Area, looking at what is going on in Estonia, in Finland, in Sweden. Because, if we would be as successful in Germany, as an example, you would have several hundred unicorn companies in Germany. Again, if you do the math, that you need less than 300,000 people in Estonia.
Germany is lucky now that we have a new airport in Berlin. So talk about infrastructure projects in Germany. That's a whole different story.
Sure. But I think that it's also it's interesting that if you look at now all the potential that we have in Europe, and then if we start really looking at replicating the success that we've seen here in the finest Bay Area, and if we can do that all over EU, then the EU and Europe will be way ahead of the US, way ahead of China, way ahead of anybody. And we know that today we're not quite there yet when it comes to kind of like the startups, especially on the digital side. And I think that it's again about increasing the talent density in a few hotspots like we're doing now in the Helsinki-Tallinn metropolitan area. And the tunnel there is just an enabler. And it's again with infrastructure in general that, of course, some people get excited about the infrastructure, but it's much more exciting to look at what it enables. And you mentioned, the mobility solutions. So we're looking at the first and last mile like mobility using autonomous vehicles. So there, again, we have companies like Aue from Estonia working together with BTT in Finland. So again, this collaboration across the bay, on this mobility and like amazing solutions that they are putting together there. Also, one thing that we have been very excited about is that there's in Bratislava in Slovakia a company called GA Drilling. They have plasma drilling, and they have been working on that for more than 10 years. They have 30 some patents, and that will allow us to increase the like tunneling speed potentially by 10 times, which is like amazing when you think about like all the tunneling. Yeah.
You have set yourself a very ambitious deadline for the opening, which is 24th of December 2024. So just basically 3.5 years from now. So many people think that's still realistic. Would you bet some money that this date will be matched as of today?
Yeah, I think yes. I mean, yes. So of course there are many factors that and many things that we need to do to meet the deadline. But if you look at how we actually intend to construct the tunnel, we will use 16 TBMs, so tunnel boring machines, and we will be boring and drilling in 8 directions, 2 pipes, like any given time. And that means that we can actually complete the physical tunnel in about 2 years. And then, of course, you need to then put in place, like the rails and the stations and like all of that. But it's totally doable to meet kind of like our deadline.
Yeah, I would like to ask a little bit critical question because some people raise their eyebrows when we talk about the financing of this whole project.
Yeah,
you have publicly stated that the seed funding came from a company from Dubai, and that the big private equity fund from China is putting in a lot of money into the project. Can you explain a little bit the background? Is it related to the Chinese One Belt, One Road concept, or is it independent, or just a private funding?
So totally independent project and totally private project. So I think that is something that is very important. And kind of like the main or lead investor is actually a London-based fund called Touchstone Capital Partners. And yes, in that fund you also have Chinese investors. So there are some state-owned enterprises from China. There are also other investors, enterprises in that particular fund, and that fund is actually going through an IPO process, so it will be listed in the stock exchange in Hong Kong. So then you will have like total transparency to kind of like everything, which I think is very good and very important. Then another thing that is very important to keep in mind that the model for the funding and for the building this, that we have a 15 billion euro budget to make the tunnel happen, and 30% is in equity, so investment into the finest Bay Area development company that is executing this project. 70% is kind of like through loans, and the loans can come like from anywhere. It can come from China, Japan, US, like Europe. So no kind of like
global.
Yeah, so very like in a project like this. But then it was very natural for us to start kind of like discussion with some of our like Chinese partners because again they have a lot of expertise in infrastructure construction, as we all know, and especially in tunneling. And then I think, but having kind of like said that. From the beginning, we have also had a very, of course, close and intense discussion with governments on both sides of the bay, so with Finland and Estonia. And from the beginning, it's been very clear that it has to be majority owned and controlled here. So that is also, like as I mentioned, like 30% equity investment. So the ownership, majority ownership will be here. The control will be here in Finland and Estonia, every step of the construction and also then operation. And I think that also what is very important, if you look like at a tunnel, 103 kilometers connecting, Helsinki Airport, Tallinn Airport, it's physical infrastructure. So if you look at then, compared to the status quo, so today we have the ferries, we have the flights, and then if we add the tunnel, so we are absolutely like improving the situation. But then let's say that something happens and the tunnel is closed. How is that situation then worse compared to having no tunnel at all. So I think that we should also be a bit better at the discussion, like in general, that, oh, it's like Chinese funding. Oh, yes, there is Chinese funding. There is other funding. That's fine. And then if you look at, with the tunnel, what is kind of like the worst thing that can happen? And I would say that, oh, yeah, that somebody closes the tunnel, or then, okay, somebody comes and takes the tunnel away. I mean, we all understand that, hey, it's a tunnel, it's massive physical infrastructure. So once it's there, it's not going away in like thousands of years. So I think that it's very important to be kind of like honest and think about this and have an intelligent discussion, and not just that, oh, there is like some China involvement, now it's like super bad. I think that it's a little bit like with the kind of like the current global like sentiment also, that of course we need to be very critical about many things, regarding China and other nations as well, but we should always try to kind of like keep things kind of like in perspective. So it's very easy to get carried away by various maybe not so rational arguments every time.
I think you have probably done more trips to Asia and China and India in particular than I did, but we also have a lot of involvement in, let's say, Europe, Asian affairs. From your experience, where do you see the biggest difference, how entrepreneurs but also politicians are looking at such an ambitious project? Do you see any major discrepancies, how this project is received in the private world and in the political arena?
I think that for us, I mean, actually one secret, I mean, I mentioned that, that we'll use 16 tunnel boring machines, but I think that is only one part of the answer to like why we can do this very rapidly, and we are doing it as a private project. So we are not forced to go through the EU public procurement and kind of like all of those processes that we all know are very, very slow. And if you look at the massive like construction projects, actually construction in general, I mean, and you can analyze every project on the planet, what happens 57% of the time, and the answer is nothing, because you are waiting for something to happen. Actually, good example now that we needed to get a government-to-government MOU signed between Finland and Estonia. It took 21 months to sign this very simple piece of paper, which basically states that both governments think that it's okay to have a tunnel. And I think that if you then look at these procurement processes and all of that, that if you have to wait for 21 months to have like a paper signed, that is like in the end, if you look at the content, very, very simple. Of course, then
many people will tell you in China in these 21 months they would have actually built the tunnel, and not signed.
Totally, maybe two. So and I think that this is something that we need to get much better, in Europe, and I think that I see that here in Finland and in Estonia as well, that it's very difficult to do things fast, because we have gotten used to this.
Just to give you an example, I'm living here in Berlin, and there is a bridge across the local river. And that bridge needs to be rebuilt. They are planning now 10 years of reconstruction time. So I'm just speechless when I read these numbers, and people just go along with it, and that shows
exactly.
That shows me
that's the point.
More and more uncompetitive, We are so resistant to change,
Yes, and I think that this is, exactly what I was told when we started talking about the tunnel project. And then I was told that, hey, Peter, you have to understand, it will take 10 years to just do the planning. And then I asked actually the guys are like A3 and AINS, and I said like, okay, like, can you explain to me like what is going on here? Why would it take 10 years? And then they told me that no, it's going to take 1 year if you do the planning properly. It doesn't take 10 years. But I think that this is, like the thing that we have here is that we are accepting these kind of like statements, and then we see, okay, you mentioned Berlin airport, which is like a sad example of like many things, but I mean, it's just that we're kind of like gotten accustomed to that, oh, it's a public project, so it will take forever. And I think that we need to hold the people in charge of these projects accountable. And I'm also, and this goes for the politicians, that if they need to make decisions, we can't have a situation where, we will let the next government or the next administration or the next that, we don't have to do this now. So we don't like avoid, losing we avoid losing the election or whatever it is. But I think this is, it's like a European disease. I think that we need to do something about it. And I don't have like the answer, but I think that it would be healthy to have a lot more like private-public partnership, because on the private side, I mean, we know our kind of like metrics and we know our motives, and one big thing like what we did with the tunnel, that we said, okay, it's going to be 15 billion, so that's the budget, and then we will have this done, and we will have the trains running the 24th of December 2024. And then the public side, when they did this same thing, they said that it might cost 12 billion or maybe it will cost 20 billion. So then you have 8 billion gap. Okay, 8 billion is like a lot of money. And then maybe this will be completed in the 30s. And okay, if not in the 30s, maybe in the 40s. So then it's like a little bit that, here we have a project that might cost something and it might get ready, in the 30s or in the 40s. So it's a little bit like if you have that kind of very lax like approach that, we don't really care if it costs, like 8 or 20 because, it's taxpayer money. And then the other thing is that, when, like who cares if we complete it, like in which like century, it's a little bit like, come on.
Yeah. You once said in one of your speeches, I have been seeing, you say an entrepreneur is a person who gets stuff done. Yeah, and I think
absolutely.
On the political side, we see the opposite. These are people who try to avoid making things happen, and they are what we call in German Bedenkenträger. People who have worries and concerns, and they always find excuses why things are not happening.
Very true. Very true.
I think that's a discussion we can have over 2 or 3 bottles of wine over dinner. And it's an endless discussion.
But it's a very important discussion. I mean, this is something that I think that we also should understand how we can work better together. And I think that if I look at a tunnel project, what we have said many times, that we want to have a very close partnership, very close collaboration with the governments. I mean, national governments, these kind of like regional governments, local governments, because it's the only way to make things happen. And if we can then get a bit of this like entrepreneurial mindset and thinking also into the public side, and I think that also for the most part, we have to trust that like the governments are trying to do their best, but then they should also accept that, like let's try to work together and like figure out, the solutions, not always that, problem, challenge, can't be done, and let's look at how can we do this and what do we need to do together to make it happen. I think that we need to get to this entrepreneurial like attitude that, in any company, any startup, that then, yes, of course, we will have problems. When we have problems, we solve them. And we don't like, lift up our hands and say that, we can't do anything, we have a problem. So that's a little bit like what we need.
I can hear the entrepreneur speaking. Yeah, very good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I ask you, you mentioned that you're already selling tickets for the ride. How many have you sold already? Is there?
Yeah, there's like a handful of tickets, like every week. So it's not like massive, and we haven't been very active marketing the tickets, but we wanted to also with that make a statement that I mean, we have now tickets that are 50 euros one way, 100 euros return, and then maybe the most important one is the 2,500 for like this unlimited annual pass, and there we want to make it also easier for people to plan, like for the future, because once you have this kind of 20-minute connection between, Helsinki and Tallinn, we have actually benchmarked the Öresund bridge, or the bridge between Copenhagen and Malmö. And what happened when that bridge was completed, more than 20,000 people from Denmark moved to Sweden because slightly, lower cost of living and like all of that. And then the unemployment in Skåne, so on the Swedish side, was almost completely wiped out because there were lots and lots of jobs available in the Copenhagen, area. And when we look at then Helsinki and Tallinn, currently we have a bit over 50,000 Estonians who live in Finland. So they are typically living and working here in like the Helsinki side. And then we have less than 5,000 Finnish people living on the Estonian side. But once we have this 20-minute connection, we expect that tens of thousands of people now living in Finland will move to Tallinn, and tens of thousands of people will live in Tallinn and work in Helsinki. And this, will create a completely new dynamic. And this is, of course, a big part of our business case is that, we can't just extrapolate and look at, now we have the ferry ride. It's been growing like in normal times, like 10-15% every year. But once you do this kind of like dramatic change that we reduce from 2 hours to 20 minutes, it's like a metro ride between, the different neighborhoods. Yeah. Of course, the impact will be very dramatic. And people can have the difference in standard of living, and cost of living. Tallinn and Helsinki, it's huge. Yeah. So we think that that's why, again, it's important to kind of like a little bit set the scene, and people start thinking that, hey, wait a minute, I could, save, in 2 months, I will save that annual pass just by like the lower rents and lower cost of living in Tallinn compared to Helsinki. Of course, over time it will even up, but I think that this is something that is important. And with the ticketing also, we are viewing it as an innovation kind of like platform. So we are looking at creating a very smooth experience. So, you take your flight from Beijing or Delhi, Tokyo, you land in Helsinki, elevator down, you're on the train, elevator up, you're in Tallinn, or maybe you stay on the train and you find yourself in Berlin because, you have the Rail Baltica thing being built at the same time. Yeah. So it's again important.
It's a fascinating concept, and I really thank you for sharing all these details. We will surely
thank you.
And we wish you all the best of luck that you get it realized.
And,
I'm sure many people will want to know, because you have made Angry Birds. This is what you're probably famous for. You have done the slush event. My question I have on my mind: what's your next project? This is gonna keep you busy probably for the next 3 to 5 years.
Right now, I mean,
anything on your mind? Are you joining Elon Musk on Mars or any other?
Let's say. No, my kind of like vision for my life is not to like go to Mars to die. So I think that I can maybe come up with something more interesting. But anyway, I think that for me right now, a lot of focus on this, kind of like I mentioned, the talent density and increasing that. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for us to kind of like leverage our expertise in education. So that is one thing that Finland is very known for, that we have a very good educational system. And actually one thing that we're working on now is with several nations. We're working together with their kind of like leadership, their ministers of education, their prime ministers, presidents, on like how we can rapidly transform the educational system. And this is something that I've been working on now during the pandemic, when less travel. So we have been putting in place a lot of kind of like processes, started a few companies to do this. So one is Finest Future. So again, we're leveraging this Finest brand there. But we're looking at how we can provide access to fantastic education for the rest of the world. And I think that when you look at education, it's the second biggest market kind of like out there after food. So and there are many different like numbers, but like 6.3 trillion is kind of like one number that's been used for like measuring the education market, education business globally. And I think that there are many opportunities in that area, and that's actually one thing that I'm very, very focused on, and I have been actually for a long time. And I think that it's kind of like the right thing to do, because that is like the only thing that we can kind of like leave behind, besides tunnels and things, but you can leave fantastic education for our children. And I think this is the most important thing. It's kind of like all of our responsibility to kind of like really make sure that we provide a great start in life for the young people. So I think that is something that I'm very focused on.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, that was very true before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic and the homeschooling, home learning, online learning, that has really put a prisma focus on the problems we have in the educational system.
Exactly.
I think we are all looking forward to your, say, creative concepts evolving around this situation, and I would be very keen to hear from that in the future. Yeah? So
thanks.
Thank you very much, Peter. We are coming to the end of our time. It was a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed, and best of luck to you and your team. I mean, it's obviously also usually a big team.
It's a big team.
You have an international team of experts there, so my regards and best of luck to all of you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Yep. Bye-bye.